We now have the opportunity to hear the Dharma. So, am I on? Can I talk? I can talk. Okay. So I'm smiling. I'm. Where is Okay. I want to make sure. Well, I'll wait a minute. It's okay. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. One more channel. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Namadi Sanshitaji Champa. Namadi Sanshitaji Champa. Namadi Sanshitaji Champa. Namadi Sanshitaji. Namadi Sanshitaji. Namadi Sanshitaji. I vow to cut off all evil within me. There will be no evil I will not cut off. I vow to practice all types of goodness. There will be no goodness I will not practice. I vow to save all living beings. There will be no living beings that I will not save. Gatha on opening the sutra. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see, to listen to remember, and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. So when I came in today and I sat down, I was laughing, or I was smiling. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, if I say to myself, I shall put on a happy face. Could you slide over just a little bit? Just because I want to be able to see every face. Not too much, a little bit. And if you would go this way, then I can. Yeah, that's good. I can see everybody. I think it's important, you know. And even when one comes for the Dharma, my master Zazi, I don't think she does it now because you just get into the American way, you know. But when we would go on for vespers or prayers in the morning, you know how like you just still in the bed or you're still in your night clothes or whatever, and she expects you to be fully dressed in front of your altar, you know, when as if you were coming into the Dharma hall, so she wouldn't let you stay in if your face was obscured. She said, if we're together here now, we're together here now. So we couldn't have our screens on, whatever you call it, screensaver. But I'm not that dogmatic. You know, this is a oral tradition, and there is something about hearing. Even when one is dying, hearing is the last thing to go. If one were practicing the Kuan Yin method, that would be following the sound, the consciousness following the sound out of the body. So for many years, before we encountered the Buddha Dharma, Panyadeepa and I practiced that particular method. Now I can call it a Dharma because I understand what it was. At that time, I didn't. They weren't trying to explain things to Westerners. They were just saying, come, show up, experience something, and then you know, because you can't understand things with the mind that can't understand things. You know, our minds are what have created samsara and all these problems. We are not going to find our way out through that same mind. But we're living in the age and the time when we think that our intellect is so supreme, and because of that, we have difficulty transcending our ignorance and coming into a true state of reality. And this is what the Buddhists have been teaching. Buddhists, by any label we give them, have come back repeatedly and repeatedly to these worlds, these 6 realms. I'm not speaking of Mother Earth. You know, we think of these realms, but our focus is on Mother Earth. Why? Why do you think that is? Because we're here, right? So it's our selfishness constantly. Our selfishness is so deep, it's so entrenched that it takes a rude awakening, you know, to bring us out of it. So I was laughing when I came in today because I had a rude awakening about something, and I wanted to make sure that Pop was here, because Pops helped me to have that rude awakening. and this is how we really grow. You know, we soft shoe and tap dance around things, and because we do, we like just blow them off, and we continue with our habitual tendencies. So one of the things that Buddha Master speaks of often that I don't hear is, especially when he's talking to householders, because I have a different view of, or I'm seated in a different seat to see another side of this, but he's always talking about good fortune. And so one thing is for sure, and that is that until near the end of his life, Shakyamuni Buddha had what we would consider good fortune. You know, so don't think he walked around in the tattered robes out of the cemetery and so forth, because you have what people give you. But he had kings that were his disciples, and queens that were his disciples, and princes and princesses, and wealthy merchants, and on and on and on. And they didn't go strip dead, pus oozed bodies, robes, and give them to the Buddha. So he didn't go out and work for these things or get these things, or even ask for these things, or necessarily even want these things. These are the things that just came to him. It's like he couldn't stop it, because that's just a part of cause and effect, that these fortunate ways of being taken care of. Not only did they invite him to dinner, sometimes somebody invites me to dinner. When Panyadeepa was here, they invite me and Panyadeepa to dinner. And there are a few that invite me and Panyadeepa and Kay to dinner. But when the Buddha was here, they'd invite him and 500 monks, to dinner. I mean, they would make sure that all of his monks and nuns would, I can't say about nuns, I'm not sure. They're a little solid on that. But I can say for a fact that the monks were taken care of, they were fed. Then and they lived outside under the root of a tree or some abandoned shack or this and that. And they made sure that they had a place to live. And that's how monasteries came into being. They say, oh, don't go out during the rainy season. It's too hazardous out there, and if you've ever been in India during the rainy season, you know. And if you haven't experienced rain. And I mean, you could go from, like, I've been in some villages there, and it was like a fully populated village. And then the rains came. And in 3 days, it was a river. It was no longer a village. I mean, a rip roaring white foam wave making river. And then after however long it takes, 3 months or 2 months or something like that, then that's over and the land dries out. They come back down out of the mountain or wherever they found refuge, and relief organizations, including our own for many years, would just send tarps and string rope, and they like tarp, tree to tree with a rope and lay the tarp over it, and that would become their new home. And then they live like that until the next monsoon came. And so it's very dangerous during the rainy season. So Buddha said, Shakyamuni Buddha said, don't travel during that time. It's dangerous. Instead, cluster together where you can and study. And so then they started building edifices for them to be able to do that. This are the disciples, and I wouldn't even just say disciples, but they were living in a country steeped in spiritual pursuit. They had a time for it in your life. It wasn't like you just were just born, you lived well, and you died. You were born, you lived well. That meant having your children, your wives, your businesses, and enterprises, your academic pursuits, your intellectual indulgence, all of that. And then the third quarter of your life, you see, the first was you were a child. The second was you became a young adult and you went out to find yourself. And the third was you reaped the fruit of what you did with your life in the third quarter, which was, you could bless your children, with a, what do you call it when you leave your children? Inheritance, right? And they would ask for their inheritance, not when you die, but before you die. I mean, it's like I would say to my mother when I was in my 20s, he's like, when I die, you're going to get this. I'm like, by the time you die, because, some people who seem like the mean ones live a long time. They live a long life. I said, you might never die. I said, it's called need it now. And so I would tell her, I need it now. I'm in my 20s, I need help now, and not when you die. So by that time, I'll have made my way, if it's possible. But she was like, oh, but when you die, but when I die, just think of all you'll have, And it's really funny because she put all these insurance policies, right, over the years. And she would tell us every time she bought one, like, when I die, she's going to get this. And so when she died, the family converged, thinking it was all this. She had about 15 accidental death policies, but she didn't accidentally die. So she was like, I got 500,000 here, and I've got $1 million there, and I got, and all of this. And when she died, they were all accidental, except a small policy that allowed us to bury her. But that's okay because that's her life, And I remember when one of Panyadeepa's, when children called him, and she'd had a daughter, and now she was having another daughter by the same young man. And they came to have a meeting with him because the young man felt that her parents should take care of the children. And Panyadeep had already had a talk with his daughter about, if you make them, you take care of them. I'll help you, but if you make them, you take care of them. He's a nice man, though. I had that same talk with my kids, and they knew I wasn't playing. So I have a wonderful life, as a I don't even know how many grandchildren I have, or I got a lot of them though, but they understood in the beginning, if you make them, you take care of them. If you don't want to work, no problem. Just don't bring any children for me to take care of. I did my job with you. You do your job with them. Okay. So they understood that. So they came to him, baby in tow, one on the way, and he was very adamant. That's about the only time I've seen Panyadeep get riled up. He said, young man, you have a wrong understanding. When I finish with you, you might not have the capacity to have any kind of understanding because you're a knucklehead. I'm about to twist your head around. And so they had that talk. Now, today, I'm going to start with the phoenix and the chicken, making preparation for our retreat that's coming up next month and where we will go over the next year. And I'm using as a basis the book written by Zazi Zoma Rinpoche, Thus Have I Seen, The Marvelous True Buddha Dharma and Its Power to Transform. So transforming is not in some kind of way that you just talk about or tell about, but in a way that is can be seen, can be known. It's not all of these woo-woo experiences, that may or may not be true. I used to run with the woo-woo crowd, until I got high up in that kind of matrix, And what I discovered is that they were the most uncoordinated, discombobulated, high anxiety people. But when they hit that stage, boy, they were good. They were good. They were good. They could sell ice to an Eskimo. About how to live successfully in this world, but they were losing their houses. About how, I'm looking at the Amway Triple Diamonds, and I'm going over there to learn how to be prosperous like them, and they don't have any furniture in their house. I got up and left, but they had polished and perfected a craft that sounded good and maybe even was good. But they only knew how to talk and been able to enter into it. It takes something to manifest something out of nothing and not just say, people cover your eyes. Can you see it in there? There it is. It's going to be visible out here. And so I have encountered in my life to date this kind of a Dharma. That in our head, we get it, But out here, we're still dealing with something. I was talking to someone last night, and I said, we call it the Four Noble Truths. Noble, what does nobility inspire in you? I think that's been a little bit mistranslated, don't you? because everybody's around here talking about the Four Noble Truths. Like, and they say that's the truth of suffering, that it has a cause. Yeah. And whatever has a cause can have a cure. And this is the way to that cure. But when you live your whole life embracing these noble truths, you start to find out that they're not noble in and of themselves. But if you tend to what they're pointing to, you will find them ennobling. So it's action. It's a verb. It's an adjective, but it's in the way of movement, not in the way of an absolute something. And so we concretize around that and talk about how we know it as if that is it. But it's something different than that. So when you get up to the highest teachings, the paramita teachings, the prajna paramita teachings, the wisdom teachings, of which one in particular is the Heart Sutra. I think you don't read beyond 4 pages before you get to the truth of no suffering. You see, if we hold on for our entire lives, pointing and directing our attention to there is suffering. Something has a cause, it has a cure, and this is the way leading. And we make that a lifetime study and not a lifetime engagement. We will come to the end and we'll still be talking about the truth of suffering. We'll still be experiencing it. We will think there is no end to it, and we won't know the way out. And we'll die maybe a little bit better than we were born. But we will never inherit or receive the inheritance of our great teacher. And that's where our work comes in a very real way. You know, we study all of these teachings in translated. I even saw a translation of something I was reading the other day, and it must have been translated during the Elizabethan period because it was talking about thee, thou, and thuses, you know, and like I was like right in there because I love the King James Version. Like when they started translating the King James Version, you know, into more modern of in that contemporary language, something seemed to be lost in there, you know, because I had to, I don't know, the way it would hit me in the beginning, before it didn't hit me quite the same way. And so when I began to read it, I began to see it's because they're expressing a different concept completely, you know. And so I love the thee, thou, and thuses, you know. But the contemporary lowered the bar so we didn't have to try so hard. And what I'm here to say is that this takes a giant leap over the bar in order to inherit. Because it's positioned, this release, this truth is positioned in a certain place. You can't bring it down to your standard. You have to rise to it. If you don't, shoot for it at least, and you'll land somewhere higher than where you were before. But you have to tend to it with all the attention that you've given to the things that have really mattered in your life. So you have to reflect on what has really mattered in your life and what provisions you have really made, for things in your life. And with that vision, that view, that determination, that doggedness, that great faith, that trust, that belief that this is the way. I remember someone she would say something, and then I say, is that right or something? And then she'd say, Bob, was that you? Bob, that's Bob talking. And Bob was her father. So half of the thoughts in her head that she assumed and took as hers, they were her father's view, based on life and what was going on in life and the times and the situations. And so it's like she didn't get a view of her own. She had Bob's view. And we're all that way. For the first, close to 20 years of our life, we have other people's views. We don't even know what ours are. We just know we don't like theirs. And that's why a lot of us don't like ourselves. But we have to dismantle. We have to really see what life has brought to us and what it speaks to us and what our own great wish is concerning things. And then when we decide what that is, stop belly aching and talking about what others didn't do for us around our great wish. It's your wish. You have to take care of that thing. And if you can't, then you have to accept that you can't. And that's it. It's not personal. It is simply cause and effect. The only time suffering comes in is if one wishes it to be different and one has not undergone the mechanisms by which we actually see our faults and can correct them. So correcting a fault is not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. So that dovetails me back to why I was laughing when I sat down, because I was really irritated today. I was really irritated. I'm going to tell a story because that's how we do around here. That's how we grow, actually. So Pop called me, he said, I'm at Lowe's. I tried to put the lawnmower together and I even charged the battery. Lawnmower doesn't work. So I'm taking it back to get a replacement. And they wouldn't give him a replacement. Now I'm on his cell phone. I hear him getting louder with the people. Well, you think such and such. I'm like, don't get mad with them. He said, well, they need something. They need the receipt or they need the card it was on. And I said, well, I don't have the receipt. I said, if I kept every receipt from Hartwood, that would probably be 3,000 receipts a month. I said, I used to keep them, but my room was just full of receipts. I said, so I stopped keeping them. Once it gets recorded and Kay does her monthly thing, receipts gone. Kay would say, well, I'll get to that later. So he said, well, this is the only place that sells this in town. So they know it's theirs, but it's not a matter of them knowing it's theirs. If you want them to replace it, then you got to prove that it's yours, number one. And they have to know when you bought it because they have a limit between when they can take something back and replace or not. So I started thinking, well, you're not going to be able to replace this because it's been a long time. It's a lawnmower. And we didn't buy it this spring. I know I didn't buy a lawnmower in the winter. So it had to at least be last summer. And it could have been before that, but I think it was last summer. But I went through the bank statements and I still didn't see it. So then she said, well, give me something. Give me the card, the debit card that you use. Well, the problem is I've had three, or at least three fraud things this year. So I've had 3 new bank cards this year. I said, can't give you the number for that one because every 2 months something happened to me. Every 2 months, I'm good? Okay, because every 2 months, somebody's hijacking the number and you can? Okay, I've got some people on. Oh, they don't need this? Okay. Because every 2 months, there's some kind of fraud going on. So we have to constantly get new cards, So I can't even tell you which card that was on. Plus we have 2 Lowe's commercial accounts and a personal. So now we've got like about 7 cards to choose from. And so I said, we might have to write this off. I said that to Kay. She says, well, no, she pulls out all the bank statements for a year, which come to about this many pages. And we start going through them. And I'm looking at the time. Now I have Dharma in 30 minutes. They're in the store and they calling me about a lawnmower. And so anyway, I couldn't find it. So the guy gives me some idea of something I can do, which is called the credit card companies give them the number. They'll try to look through things. They finally give the date of purchase. Come back to the store. They'll verify that it was purchased at the store, then ship it off. I said, we need to write this off. That's all. And we need to learn something from it. First of all, when we invest in, this was no rinky-dink lawnmower. This was a good lawnmower. Expensive lawnmower. When we invest in one, we need to put it together and run it. Not a year later. And if we don't need to run it, don't ask me for it. And so I was like irritated about the whole thing. But now I had just jumped on Pops because Pops was going off in the store because they wouldn't give him a new lawnmower. And I'm saying, Pops, that's not their fault. That's our fault. It's my fault that I haven't kept the receipt. It's your fault that you didn't put the lawnmower together and run it in a timely manner. And we just accept that this is the consequence of that. Now, I said that because that's the right thing to say, but I wasn't feeling it inside. But I do know the right thing to say. That's why we have to say to ourselves what things are. We have to get in the habit of saying to ourselves, right in that moment when we want to accuse somebody else or blame somebody else or make it more their fault than ours, we have to say to ourselves what something is with clarity. Because that's part of why the anger comes. It's part of a deflection mechanism. It's an ignorance that we have. And it's a learned tendency to deflect. But if we don't get out of it, we don't stop suffering. That's what I mean. Nobody can take me out of my suffering but me. So I say to him this, and he says, you're right, Mom, you're right. But I'm still inside. I'm still mad. I'm still upset about the thing, And so, and I'm upset because people give us money for things, to use in a certain way, to be responsible in how we use it. And because we didn't have to earn the money to pay for that thing, sometimes we forget somebody did. We think it's like Money Tree Hardwood, just go pull down a bill and indulge yourself. But these are the things that are coming to me, taking ultimate responsibility, buck stopping here. Because the more you go to that place, the more you'll instantly see it. You won't have to think and contemplate, hear about it in a Dharma talk. It will come to you. The clarity will naturally arise in you. And you have to keep it in front of you, because with good fortune comes laxness. We forget. We forget. We forget what it took, how something came to us. Sometimes we think we did it all ourselves. But as I think back on the few jobs I had, I won't say jobs, I think I only had one job and decided I didn't like a job. Nobody telling me when to come, when to go, what to do, how to do. So from early on, I would do big businesses, but that has its own suffering. Sometimes it's better to hit somebody else's time clock, because you start that business, you working 16 hours a day for many years, just to be able to say, nobody tells me when to come, when to go, hit the clock and what to do. I'm going to tell you, it ain't that much glory in it, all right? But you start to find that hindsight becomes foresight, becomes insight. And while we're putting all of these Buddhist badges on ourselves, because we can sit and meditate for an hour, or because we know this chant, or because we know this mudra, I'm really learning something from Panyadipa, because there was a time in our life I was all into this, because I came the Mahayana way first before I went Theravada, right? And I've told the story, oh my goodness, I hope you get this out there in radio land. Everybody here will get it. But I told the story often about how when the monks would be doing all this chanting, Panyadipa would lean over to me and say, banana fana bomana fee fi moment. Because there would be so much pride around, these outward appearances of holiness and so forth. And, I don't have my beads on today, but I normally have my mala beads on, and we're taking the beads off and we're doing things and we, and all of this, and we're making elaborate garments, and not so much the Theravadas. They could use a little bump up, but, and in the Mahayana, they have silk robes and like beautiful things and gestures, like when they walk like this with the robe. It just looks high, holy, beautiful, above the cut and things like that. But these same monks bickering and fighting, just like they did in the Buddha's day. He would go visit a group and they're fighting over things. He say, don't fight. And they say, hey, Buddha, you visiting our community. We got this. That's what they would say to him. And so in the humility of leaving each human being to what they choose, he nodded and he walked to another community, his own communities, his own followers. And I read a sutta yesterday to some of you from a Buddha master. And he was talking about that same thing today, how they come into the temple, accuse him of things, don't follow the teachings. And he gives everything to us, and what he gets in return is suffering. So when we're talking about taking up the Bodhisattva path, don't have any illusion that it's a glorious path, because it's not a glorious path outwardly. It only becomes glorious if you're vibrating in the same frequency with the minds of the overcomers, so that even while there is suffering here, one does not touch that suffering by virtue of where they are perched in reality and looking upon that event, or looking upon that person, but with the mind of a Buddha. That's why we do certain practices. And these are practices that are designed to help us shift the structure of appearances, to shift how we see things. So when I think I'm being blamed for something, or I'm being outed for making a mistake, or I recognize that there's a mistake, oh, happy day that I see that, because now I can hold it in such a way that when that puppy comes across my screen again, I know it. And I have the capacity to subdue it because it is known and it is seen. But when I fluff it off here and fluff it off there, it comes by again and again, and like, missed that one. Didn't see it. Caught it yet, but it'll be okay. And it just happens again and again and again and again. Sometimes, now this is over the affairs of our life. You know, how we interact with our son or our daughter, our coworker, our neighbor. How we handle the things that we have, how we value certain things, how we use certain things. Buddha Master says that once one gets in the right spaces of virtue, they can't stop the good fortune from coming. You can't, on the Bible we say, you can't steal my blessing. But it's a real thing, you know. We like get irritated with that kind of talk, you know. But it's a real thing, if one can understand it. So I've gotten into the habit, and you all see me laughing all the time when I said, but it's not because things are so good, but it's because I recognize something deficient in me. And when I can recognize it, then that's a good moment. Because even if I don't fix it, even if I don't completely turn at this moment, even if I can't, even if the karma is not there for it, it's like trying to, you know, teach algebra to a 6-year-old. That it doesn't go. It's not the time. The conditions aren't right. So because of what's already set up and what's already in place, or just simply because of what time it is. She's 6. There doesn't have to be anything wrong. It's just the timing or the capacity. I mean, it's been raining like cats and dogs here. And it could be raining like cats and dogs, but Bill will still go out and water everything for 2 hours. You know, and I can't really explain that. I used to try, but there's not the capacity to understand. He knows his job is to water. And he's serious about his job. That's what he knows. So I don't get upset with him when he waters. I just send somebody else say, Bill, no need to water today. This is enough. Oh, okay, then I'll water tomorrow. Okay. I mean, like that. But I could get angry. I could get upset. But I understand the capacity there and the great heart to do what he can do according to what he can understand. Yeah. But to the one who can understand, then I'm going to come in a way like, you're not listening. So I'm going to say it louder so you can hear. And that's fine to say it louder. I mean, if your prized stallion is running towards a precipice, you know, you don't say, come back. Y'all, hey, or something, anything, you know, to get his attention. And so sometimes that's called for, but it's never called for with the internal irritation, anger, you know, that's what I'm saying. All of that can be brought onto the path and pacified. And we have to do that. So when someone has a peeve, the first thing they do is they get together with a group of people who have the same pet peeve, and they form something to combat that thing that has them peeved. And that's what we do. And it's not a bad thing to form, to do better in the world, to do good in the world. But we should not do it to pacify our pet peeve. And that's what we find in a lot of the social programs that we have. You know, so if I'm raped and I'm still mad about that, I get 10 other women who were raped and we'll all be really mad. And we'll go out to try to slay the dragon. If I'm upset about being Black and white American, then I'm gonna get with some other of my homies and we're gonna start something, and I'm gonna get me some white allies because you gotta have some white faces in there. And then I know I'm gonna get mad with them because I'm gonna say, like, this is my issue. If you want to support me, fine. But you know what? You don't walk in front. You stand behind and let me speak because I can speak for myself. Then they get upset with me because they're used to speaking and we're supposed to be listening because we need so much help. Because what? We're inferior? I mean, you know, these things get complicated, but they have to be understood, is what I'm saying. And because we don't understand, with all of our help, we make the world worse. And it's because we have not built our own knowledge and understanding to the place that it can be supported by the good fortune to make those works useful. So we come up at the end of our lives and we decide we just go back and do the things we used to do. We'll go back and play, and, you know, we're a little decrepit now, but that's okay. I mean, maybe I can't hit that baseball like I used to do, you know, but I can go and play putt-putt. They got a little putt-putt place up there because I can't swing the golf club either. I can go to a little putt-putt place because I only have to get to there, you know. So I start piddling around, doing all of these things, and I can't, well, I've lost my vigor, but I'm still alive because they give us medicines and things that we can live a long time, probably longer than we should. And this becomes our life, whether we're Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever you want to call it. And I'm asking the question, is that enough? Sometimes we need an example of how to really investigate life, because that's what the Buddha invites us on, an investigation. And he invites us to investigate it through our own lived experience. He gives a caveat at the beginning and says, this is going to hurt, you know, but don't worry, you know, it's going to be better as you walk through it. And you got to be careful because nothing is of any private interpretation, meaning you can't tell me exactly what this means and how to use it in my life through the lens of my experience. I have to figure that out. So a teacher, a good teacher, keeps dovetailing back to one's own self. And you have to figure out your life year by year, month by month, day by day, hour by hour, moment by moment. And when we think we haven't figured it out because our teacher didn't tell us, then we run off to another one. And we'll stay with them for a little while. But oops, as soon as they get to something, we run off to another one. And then we run off to another one. And by the time we realize it, our life is over and we have not found it, because that we're looking for out there is actually in here. But we have to look. We have to face it. We can't take offense in it. We're in Samsara now. We can't say, well, I don't like swimming, so I don't want to learn how to swim after you've already been dropped in the middle of the ocean. That's where we are. So we have to stroke with all our might. And when we get a little bit of it, the truth of suffering, so we can really see what makes us suffering. And everybody got that pop quiz, what causes our suffering? Our clinging and craving, our grasping. Everybody's got that. But they don't recognize grasping for real in their life. They don't realize how many times they grasped in the last 30 minutes because they've just been going through doing life stuff. They don't have an eye that is focused enough, a lens to see it. So it just walks them by. So I wanted to ask you a question. How did you sleep last night?
I slept. Once I stopped telling myself. Because the alarm system went out, the fire alarm system. And to my surprise, I found myself very pleased because I wasn't protecting the sleep I was having. And I went right back to sleep. And to my surprise, I slept longer than expected. So I slept well.
That's good. They told me that the fire alarm went off and disturbed everybody's sleep last night. I said, that's a good thing that it went off and there was no fire. That's that's the way I looked at it. It was like, I don't mind the alarm going off. The fact that there was no fire, it was like, yay. So it's really, like whether you see the glass half empty, half full, or half full, or you see the glass full, half with water, half with air. You see what I'm saying? There's 3 different ways to see something. And this is all about restructuring how we see things. You see what I mean? So all of us, the new craze now is apprehending emptiness. First it was mindfulness. And then when that started getting a little, when we started getting a little stuck with that because we're not really making the progress we wanted, we needed something else. So then we started attaching compassion with it. And then there was all of these retreats and teachings on compassion, right? So now it's emptiness. All of these teachings on emptiness. when the mindfulness wasn't perfected, so that the compassion wasn't perfected, we just hopped over there and we're doing the emptiness, right? And gonna land with the same thud, because all of these things have to be personally walked out in our life. So maybe we have to change our idea of what it looks like and what it feels like. So when we get to the wisdom teachings, they talk about there is no suffering. In emptiness, in the emptiness view, no suffering. If there's no suffering, there's no cause, there's nothing to cure, and there's no path. All talk before that is amateur talk. Talking about it and not doing the things that lead us to it, amateur talk. But this year we're going on an experiential journey. We already started. I think we've been about a year. And I've seen such a great transformation of those who stuck with it, who actually put the things that we've been, we've had some directed readings and so forth. And I tell you, I've backed away from the Bodhisattva teaching because some people didn't really know what it meant. It sounds good. But when you actually start doing the practices that start consuming, burning up the defilements in your mind, you're like, whoa, this is serious stuff. I didn't know that it was called for this. I always talk about everybody loves a martyr, but nobody wants to be one. But actually, it is where you give your life. So one needs to think hard and long, or at least don't waste your time, trying to convince others that you are one. You may be on a different trajectory at this time. And there's no harm, there's no foul in that. But I'm just saying, don't try to lift 100-pound weights if you can really only handle 15. You'll hurt something. But there is a way, there is a quick bath that doesn't take lifetimes and lifetimes upon lifetimes, or more, I'll say, because we've already lived lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes. I don't mean 2, 3, 5. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands. We've got it all in there. And that's why whenever we have that aha moment, where does that aha moment come from? It's not a trick question. Where? Don't be hesitant. Where? Yeah. Yeah. It arises from where? That's what I'm looking for. When we have that aha moment, somebody can be saying something. They're not saying that, but they're saying something. And we have an insight inside. Something comes up that we know within our hearts of hearts is true. It brings a clarity to the moment. It brings a clarity to a past moment. It drops something in that has you charged up, and you know that something's coming because you just got, the memo and you're ready for it. Like the little toughie with the jewelry, helmet and gloves. Nobody bothers me. You find a strength. You're overwhelmed by it because you don't even know what it's for, what to do with it. Around Kundalini rising. But it's nothing but our own intrinsic nature having a flash due to some condition some cause ripening. And we should be looking for these all the time. But it takes time to sit and to ponder. It takes time to not think. It takes time to learn how to rest. So they're always saying to me, why don't you have these retreats where, like you're sitting, walking all day. You can sit and walk by yourself. I don't need to take up my time for you to sit and walk. You can sit and walk. So when you come here, we come to learn something to go back there to sit with. Or preferably, yes, to sit with. But then after we've sat with it for a while, using it to like just hold off. But I think, I feel to just put up a barrier and then just sit there in that emptiness and see what comes. We're surrounded by, infused with, we are some total reality itself. So this whole fascination I have with Panyawati is my whole mission. My fascination with Panyawati and her things. You don't have to name them worldly things and spiritual things. Spiritual things, same difference. To really break through that barrier, we have to also drop our spiritual shenanigans. Conceived in a don't know in the bad way, in a don't know mind. But there can be our coming to a place, and I'm almost finished. Didn't even get to that was the introduction. But we can come to the place that we trade in our ignorant, don't know mind for the true resting in a don't know mind. It means not thinking that I know and not defending my not knowing, and set in expectation of the dawning of truth, because I am part of that. And then we move from the beginning of the practice of suffering. Suffering has a cause. There is a cure, and it's walking in these ways. And he gives 8 steps. Meditation is not number 1. It's right view. So we can't come with all of our views. We're being asked if we can. You don't even have to suspend them. You can keep them right there. It's just an openness and willingness to listen to the views of the sages. Just taking that in and letting it mix and shake it up. Toss it out. Some things will fall away. Some things will remain. Do it again. Shake it up. Toss it out. Some things will fall away. Some things will remain. And just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until our view becomes refined. So what we call Dharma, and I think that'll be the last thing I say today, and that was at the beginning and where I had planned to get to. Is preface. First page, it says page 11, but it's the first page of text, right? And she talks about Dharma. Now, this is not a Dharma book. This book will be helpful to us, and we won't read it page by page, but it gives an example of how to walk out the spiritual life and how to recognize all the bobbing and the weaving so that we can actually see that we've been on a spiritual trajectory all along. Some things we thought were spiritual, some things we thought were not spiritual. But if you define spiritual as that which leads to ultimate truth, then you can see all of it can be weighed as spiritual. And so she gave a definition of Dharma so that we would understand. Dharma can have different meanings in different contexts. Generally, it refers to the teachings of the Buddha. We call that Dharma. Okay? But Buddha Master reminded us that all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma because everything that can be encountered in life can be understood, addressed, and neutralized when one's mind is in 100% toe with reality. And that's all we're trying to do. And what comes with that are all the other things we want: peace, joy, happiness, contentment, whatever is your flavor. So Dharma is sometimes translated as, the absolute truth of reality and how to understand or comprehend that truth. And I would have to say there's still a division then, but how to enter into and become just that living truth. It doesn't mean that we cease to be what we call people or human beings. We don't have to speak in the third person, which some do because they've just gotten lost and don't know, like, how do I relate to myself because I don't think of myself as a self, and like there's all that kind of selfing, So, but that's okay because that's a good place to be in because you've untethered from your sense of a personal self, but you aren't tethered yet. And so recognizing these stages and understanding them, one continues to live out this life until it ends because causes and conditions. We have to finish this. And then they talk about entering into paranibbana. That's like the gateway to everywhere or the gateway to nowhere or no coming and going by force, but one can spontaneously pick up and transform into something to help not just human beings, not just beings on planet Earth. Talk about Thailand, that's a long ways away. Some people never seen it, don't know it exists, except other people talk about it, right? Other people paint pictures of what it looks like. And so some of us believe that there's a Thailand. Nobody says, oh, I never saw it, so I don't think there's a Thailand. But that's just speaking of this world. So we think this is the only world. We talk about the billions and billions and billions of galaxies. and nobody else sentient or conscious or have any intelligence, or if the word extraterrestrial scares you, that just means they're not here from here. That's all. It's like people from Thailand are not from the US. But if I'm so afraid of things, like I can't have certain people come into my neighborhood. I can't have certain beings on my planet. I can't, it just has to do with the constriction of mind in terms of being connected with reality. And that's why he teaches about releasing the mind and becoming vaster and vaster. So it's not so intelligent to think, well, you have to show me or I won't believe it. Why do I have to step into your ignorance? I'm just speaking honestly now. So you have to know what you think, what you believe. You have to be willing to open your mind to apprehend what is knowable. That's what I'm saying. So if your Dharma is not bringing to you things that were heretofore unknowable, but are now knowable to you, then maybe you're not growing. And maybe that's not the true Dharma. If you make it a subcategory of your psychology, maybe that's not the true Dharma. And I'm no longer I did, and I apologize for how I have knocked it in the past. If that's your thing, like go with God, Fergie. Just keep doing that. But for those who want to truly make this life meaningful, something beyond what we can conceive in our ignorance, it's for that reason that Buddhas appear in the world. For those. There's something for everybody else. But for some of us, we've been looking for that one. Some of us have been fortunate to find one along the way that did a major correction. And suddenly they found themselves not on the broad path where everybody's going, but they found themselves on the narrow path where only a few could go. And you can decide if you want to go with the crowd and come around again and again and again, going with the crowd, or if you want to step off. Don't you know that there's something more? Can't you feel it? Don't you see it working, birthing in you, growing in you? But we have to not be afraid to say, right now, I don't know. It's hard to say when we've studied something or practiced something 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's hard to say that when we had an experience that was so fantabulous, out of this world, imputing itself on us. It's hard for us to say, I don't know. That I don't know kind of like gets out of our vocabulary, right? But to know more, we have to say within ourselves, I don't know. And in opening up, we can know more. Every experience is not going to be the same. There were experiences that I had, and those are the ways that they impacted upon me. And I can't say, and this is the only way this comes. Except when I'm being amateurish. Because I know it comes that particular way, but that's not the only way it comes. Sometimes we can't go further because we had a particular mind-altering, life-altering experience. And we're like just stuck in that groove. We're just stuck in that rut. When I had this experience, experience was an experience. What since then? How have you managed your life? Like a Buddha? If you have, then maybe it was the ultimate experience. If not, then it wasn't. Don't get mad with me. So when we do practices, as we start to move into the Vajrayana, it's not like these are poor choice of words, but words are what we make up, what we come up with in our own mind. So we got to go with what we come up with. That's why the Buddha would always say, this can't be explained with words, but it can be known. It can be experienced. If we rely on Webster to define everything for us, we will miss a lot. And so they talk about the Dharma that we practice. It's not the Dharma of reading books like this is if this was a sutra, like this is the Dharma. That's one kind of understanding of Dharma. But Buddha Dharma is thinking like a Buddha thinks. It's not the other way around. That thinking does not have to conform to our way of thinking. But our thinking can gradually conform to their way of thinking if we practice thinking that way. So the next time when we are taught that we should practice forbearance, for instance, so the next time the angry mind arises and it just shoots like a cannon right out, aimed at whoever is aimed at, you might not be able to catch it that first time, but soon as you recognize it just shot out, instead of being angry, I should be practicing forbearance at this moment. How can I practice forbearance? One could be the person already feels bad enough, so don't have compassion. Number two, don't be attached. It may cause you to suffer loss. Sometimes we do. You should have put the receipt up. Three, it could be if the person has no remorse or has no mind of like, it ain't my fault, it's everybody else's fault, then he says that unless there was this kind of attitude and friction, there would be no opportunity to practice forbearance. So it's getting better now, right? It's getting better. And so now I'm grateful for this experience, and it's a little experience. Maybe we need to change the batteries. Maybe it's time. Did we write down the last time we did the battery change? Did we? Okay, so which went off? The courtyard? Okay, so we wrote down the dates because they're on a relay. So once one starts going bad, they go bad in a row. We have to change them all, right? And so, but we did it for the house, but we don't live in the house. We live in the courtyard, right? So now we're going to change these and we're going to record the date. And then we'll know because they have to be changed every year. And we do that in rotation. See, that's it. So then we won't have that suffering anymore. We won't wake up in fear that there's a fire because we've done what we needed to do. I'm just so enjoying this. I tell you, this is just life 101. And yet we're calling this the Dharma. So we start to see that all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma, but that we can have the mind of a Buddha. And then we won't be able to stop good fortune. It'll just be the effect of the causes that we create. I hope I have enough life in me left to fully realize this, because I think it's possible, and I think it's the inheritance of everyone who seeks wisdom and freedom. So thank you for coming today. We really will start with the book next week. I won't talk. Did we, I think that we can close with the reading, the sutra reading. We didn't read it, did we? The chant on reading, learning. We didn't do it this morning, did we? Before we started. Okay, let's just. No, the opening of the Gata. We did read it. Okay, I think surpassing, penetrating Dharma is rarely encountered even in 100 million kalpas. I vow to taste the truth. Yeah.